What is up, guys? Teddy Cornwell here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk, the world's most underrated podcast on earth. But today we are joined by a man, a coach, a legend, a guy who shares the same degree as me. And I'll just leave it at that. Y'all can do your research on what the coach got his degree in. But the one and only, I'm just going to go, Coach. How you doing today, sir?
Doing great, Teddy. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I gotta say, we do have the same degree, and I want people to do the research. So I want them to look into that and look into you. But I thought that was pretty cool. I think they say smart minds think alike, Coach. So smart minds
I
think.
hope so.
I hope so too. We're here and you're here, so I guess it did work out. But obviously, you're so well known for your coaching abilities, but also a ball player too. And I kind of want to take a little bit back. High school days, Pee Wee days. Where did the love of football come from, Coach? Why football, I guess?
Yeah, a good question. When I started playing sports, I think I was 5. I got into baseball, t-ball at that time, and basketball, played that. And then football at 9 years old. You couldn't play until you were 9. There wasn't flag football and those things back in the day. So you got into football at 9 years old and you're into pads at that time. I think my love started then. I had great coaches. They were really hard on us, but we won. And I was actually, funny story, I was a big kid. So I moved up an age. So my weight forced me to move up. And a friend of mine named Skate did the same thing. Well, his dad was the coach on the team. So we were 2 of the bigger players. We were the younger players on the team. And we were, some of the better players as well. But we won. I mean, it was back in 1985. There was the Marsh McLennan team and Optimus. There was the 85 Bears, right? Those are the 2 teams that people were talking about. We were pretty good. So it started then. And I think learning the game, being around really good coaches, being around good teammates, having success, I just started to realize like this is pretty fun. I liked hitting people. I like the physicality of it. But more importantly, I like the team aspect and trying to make, 11 guys work together to have success. And so we did that. So for 4 years, I was on that team. Then we played another year in a 12-year-old league and then just continued on from there. But my path through football, I've had really good coaches. And I've had really good teammates that were really good players that, we built bonds and we were on great teams and had a lot of success. But I think the coaching, the relationships, all those things just grew into ultimately when, I decided through college, what am I going to do with my life? And you get to that point where it's like, I really love football. I'm not going to go on and play at the next level. I've been around people that have impacted me in a positive way. They've been coaches. So I progressed to that. And, when I decided to be a coach, I had a lot of people come to my side and help me out and try to point me in the right directions of, how to go about doing this.
And some things that you kind of highlight on. And I think I found it interesting how you talk about there's 11 other people on the field. And for those who don't know, obviously Coach was a quarterback. And obviously you're the 12th man. Well, no, there's 11 people. So you would be, I was thinking there's 12.
Yeah.
I seem silly now. I watch football every Sunday, but obviously kind of you're the leader of that, and you're the leader of the team being the quarterback, especially on the offense. So I found that really interesting. And then obviously, why pick quarterback? Was that always just due to, the height that you were kind of having, or was quarterback your first position you really fell in love with, Coach?
No, it wasn't. So I played, I played O-line and D-line when I was young. And then, as I grew up, got taller, I leaned out, started playing outside linebacker and fullback. And my sophomore year in high school, I was playing fullback at the time. Well, our fullback coach or running back coach didn't show up to that camp that day. So I went with the quarterbacks and I just started throwing the ball, and I'm over there just kind of messing around. And then the high school coach, Steve Vogel at the time, he told me, he's like, hey, this is something you might want to work on. So he gave me a football. And so that whole entire summer, I was like the third guy. And Jake Plummer, you had Jake Plummer on here. He had just left. And so I went to the same high school as Jake Plummer. So who was going to follow that guy, right? Jake the Snake Plummer. And it certainly wasn't going to be me. I wanted no part of that. But I worked on it all summer long, and we get into a camp my junior year, and I'm the third string guy, and just through practices ended up being the starter. We went to state that year. We got beat, but we had a great run, and so I played that for 2 years, and then moved on to Boise State, where I walked on to play quarterback. But it was not because I wanted to, and it was one of the things where, as a player, you don't sometimes decide the position that you're going to play, as the coaches do. And when Coach Vogel was like, you need to start working on this, I took it serious and went and spent time by myself throwing at goalposts, and took my girlfriend out there, who's now my wife, threw at her. I threw at anybody I could possibly get out there just to work on it, because I didn't know anything about it. And so it was something that I had to work really hard on. And then, it ended up being a positive, and something that I continued on from that point forward, with playing, and also then, coaching that position eventually as a profession.
And it's almost like everything happens for a reason. And, I just got to tell everyone, it was business management that Coach and I majored in. So I don't want you guys to do too much digging, but business management.
That's right.
Kind of back to it, everything happens for a reason. And, it's like you were thrust into that position. You prospered, and obviously you go to Boise State, which ends up leading to your coaching career eventually, and becoming the first guy to be a coach there, the head coach. So, I mean, it's kind of like everything happens for a reason. And I guess, why pick Boise State out of high school? Was Boise State your dream school, Coach?
No, it wasn't. Actually, there was 2 schools, Washington State and Colorado were 2 schools that I really thought were my dream schools. Ultimately, Colorado is what I thought, I wanted to go and play at. Didn't work out. Didn't have a scholarship offer there. So a friend of mine that I played with at Capitol High School named Jim Brecky, he was a big-time recruit, played tight end, and he decided he was going to go to Boise State. And so he took a visit there, and now I was his best friend, so I got a chance to visit too. And if you understand recruiting, right, who are the influencers with the big-time players? Well, that was one of the reasons, I was there, is I was his buddy. And so I ended up having a chance to walk on, and it was great. Look, I appreciated the opportunity, earned a scholarship after the first year of being there. And, from that point forward, had my opportunities to play, got injured, and ultimately, was on the sideline for most of my career. And I played for 4 head coaches during that time. And so what helped me, I think, in my coaching career was those different styles and the things we had to do with the different staffs. And I actually set in on head coach interviews because I was one of the local players. Nobody else was around. They wanted some players to sit in there and listen to these coaches' interviews. So Houston Nutt, who ended up being our coach for 8 months, I got to sit in there and listen to his interview. And then ultimately Dirk Cutter that followed him, I got to listen to him as a coach interview for the head job. And I didn't know at the time that's what I wanted to do. But, just like to your point, those little experiences all added up over time. And then when I decided I wanted to coach, it was Dirk Cutter's staff and ultimately Dan Hawkins that took me in his office, set me down for an hour the first time, and just said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And he told me all the things in coaching that are not good and why not to do it. And I came back and we talked again, and things went from there. And ultimately I ended up working for Dan, and he hired me to be the tight ends coach, which he gave me the first opportunity to be a Division I football coach. And so, yeah, all those things, to your point, you don't know at the moment that this is going to lead to something better. You just try to embrace it as much as you can, learn from it as best you can. And then when you do start piecing things together, as I look back, I'm 47 years old. I look back on all the things that went right for me in my career. It was because of the people that were in it and the things they did for me and the interactions I had with those people. So, you can never take any opportunities that you get or encounters for granted, right? You just don't know, when that's going to show back up again. And so, that led to that first opportunity, just being at Boise State. But, Boise was my only option at that time. Could have went smaller, but I wanted to play Division I football, and they were not Division I at the time, but the next year they would be. So I wanted to do that, or I didn't want to play. That was my goal. I want to play Division I football, and ultimately got a chance to do that.
And obviously, to add on, I think it is interesting how good things kind of create you into who you are, but also bad and mistakes create you into who you are. And I'm sure there were some bumps in the road that kind of led you to, where you were as the Boise head coach eventually, after kind of bouncing around and, Texas, etc. And I do have to ask this big question, looking back at kind of your coaching career, Coach, what are some of the biggest things you've learned, biggest life lessons, both on and off the field?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot. I think it boils down to there's a lot of things I've taken away from that environment, right? One of the things about being on a football team or being a coach on a staff of a program, every day you walk in, you have people in there that are chasing greatness. And so it really doesn't matter, like however your day's going, when you walk in that building, something positive is going to come out of it, right? Because everybody's there is trying to be great. And so that's one thing about that environment that I've always appreciated. When you walk in those doors, you're around people that are chasing greatness. And so it motivates you, inspires you, gives you a little kick in the ass to make sure, you're following through on the things that you should be doing to better yourself. But, to me, it comes back to the people. Like the number one thing, it really in any profession, and especially in football that I've learned, it's all about the people, but it's all about the right people. And so I hear people say it's all about the people. I think it's all about the right people. And, that's been one thing, in a really positive way. I've been around the right people, and then I've been around, some of the wrong people. And you learn from both, right? You learn what you like and you learn what you don't like, and then you apply it to your own philosophy. And so to me, that's what I've taken away: the relationships that you build, the opportunities to learn, about other people and their stories, and then to see the things you don't like, to say absolutely non-negotiable, I'll never do anything like that. And so, to me, those are the main lessons that have come from the people that you work with, you coach, your colleagues, and then I think also what it takes to be in that environment. You got to be driven, and you got to be smart. We always say smart, hungry, and humble. You better have those qualities. And then things that I took from that a little further were things that I believed when I became a head coach that you had to have to be a successful program. You had to have discipline, you had to have toughness, and you had to have conviction. Those three things that, were things that we talked about in our programs when I was the head football coach. So, because, every day you're striving to get better, you're working on things for each individual, coaches, players, other staff members that they have to work on to improve, because you're all shooting for the same goal at the end of the day, right? And I think that's the thing that you have to understand when you get into that environment. But when you have the right people, boy, you get into a groove, and all of a sudden, like you're in this rhythm where things are improving. You're seeing the progress, even with the loss. That's a setback. But even when you lose sometimes during a season, you can put the tape on the next day and be like, we're not that far away. And exactly why you lost. And it's not like everything gets thrown out the window. You just go right back to this process, and your people believe in it. And that you're going to improve if you fix a couple things. I think that's one of the best things about that, when you have the right people around you, is everybody sees it and they go to work on it. And then the next week, when you see the win or the progress made, it's a rewarding feeling to have that, that kind of progress made, and to have the kind of people around you to do that.
And man, got me thinking. Obviously, I'd rather have a small group of people who are there for me till the end than a big group of people who are just kind of, willy nilly in my life. I think that hit on the nail. The right people in your life is what it kind of comes down to
Sure.
get you to where you are, keep you on track, keep you moving, keep you doing your thing. Yeah, man. And again, bringing that culture like you brought is super key. Now, I get excited thinking about all the players you've coached, and man, obviously you've coached some amazing players. Who are some of the guys that really just? This is the Underdog Talk podcast. Who are some of the guys who
Sure.
were underrated and then just shown? Obviously, I can think of a few that played for you, but I want to hear from you, Coach. Who are some of the guys that just broke out and had stellar seasons with you, under you?
Yeah. Well, we had a lot.
Yeah.
And one thing about being at Boise State, that is the ultimate underdog. And a lot of people talk about the 2007 Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma, right? You have the storied program, Oklahoma. You have this up-and-coming Boise State team. What are they about? And we ultimately find a way to win. And it's a hell of a game, right? One of the best games, if not the best game ever in college football, the way it ended and all the adversity both teams faced in that game. But, there's been so many players through the years that came in that nobody knew about, that put their head down, just went to work. And I think that was one of the best things about that time in college football was you were there and you weren't going anywhere else. So if things weren't working out, you had to figure out a way to make it work. And so if you had a bad day, you sat in your locker and you focused on what do I have to do tomorrow to be better so this doesn't happen again. If you had a great day, what do I got to do tomorrow to make sure that continues and build some consistency? One guy, Kellen Moore, everybody knows who he is now. Nobody knew then. He had an offer from Boise State and Idaho at the time. And here is this lefty out of Prosser, Washington, that had a dad that was a really successful high school coach that TiVo'd every game and just studied the game of football, and then showed up his redshirt freshman year and went 50-3. He's the winningest quarterback in college football history, and the 3 losses were by 7 points or less. And, there's a guy right there that you talk about work ethic, you talk about consistency, you talk about having the right people around him and being the right person. Everybody knows Kellen Moore now. Now he's with the Eagles doing a great job as the offensive coordinator. But that story there, he's a guy that took advantage of his opportunity and, in my opinion, outworked everybody every single day, a true no days off type guy. And it showed. I think it showed for our program. He put Boise State on the map in a lot of ways, not the only one, but he did a lot of things that during that run that he had that really made Boise State stand out as one of the top programs in the country. But he's one that everybody would know. I think on the other side of the ball, when you look at Leighton Vander Esch, who was a guy that that came in as a walk-on, and small school in Idaho. And one thing I would tell you about Leighton, he believed that he had the ability, and he was just tall and skinny, just didn't quite have the weight. He wasn't the wolf hunter at that time, okay, but his dad and his family, they believed in him. So Leighton Vander Esch, so I think he was a guy that when he walked on, I think he felt like he could play. His parents certainly felt that way. And, when he came into our program, the first thing he did was stand out just with his work ethic. And you knew that this guy had that drive to be successful. And in his first year, you start to see him put on some weight. You see his ability, to move. But more importantly, the character of Leighton, the attitude he brought every single day. You could tell that he was a guy that brought people with him as a leader. And, before his freshman year, going to his redshirt freshman year, we put him on scholarship. He was going to go back to having to river guide and, make some money and do some different things. And we're sitting there as a staff talking about, we need this long guy that can run, that can play this will linebacker position. And I'm like, we got him. And we put him on, and I think that was all he really needed, even to boost his confidence more that we believed in him. And he went from 195 to 245 pounds during his time at Boise State, and went to, as a first round draft pick for the Cowboys, and became the Wolf Hunter. And so, there's a lot of guys that have come through the programs that I've been a part of that are like that. There's tons of stories of guys. And going back to what I said before, when you walk in that building, people are chasing greatness. As a college football player, you have a small window to create an opportunity for yourself to play college football. And if you have a dream of going on to play in the NFL, it's going to happen very quickly, right? That little window, that time's going to go like that. And you're either going to have a chance to play at the college level, and if you do well, you may have an opportunity to play at the next level. And so that sense of urgency that everybody has in that building, it's just different. It's a different environment than probably most people come into work every day. So I think, those two guys really stood out. And, there's others that I've coached that have made a huge impact on my life and have made an impact on their teammates' lives, the program. Everybody remembers them. And, what I'm grateful for is having a chance to be a part of that. And, now that I'm out, that's one thing. I get to connect with some of these guys because I have more time, and I get to go back and we can rehash some of the old memories and lie to each other how the stories really were and all those fun things. But I'm proud to see what they are doing now. I'm proud to see them in their lives. They've got children, they've got careers, they got families. And, to me, that's when I talked about relationships and the right people, that's ultimately what you're going to take away from this, especially in that profession, because they're all going to end at some point their careers, and you're going to see them go on and be successful in other things besides football. And there's been a lot of guys that have done that, and a lot of great stories along the way that, guys who created their opportunities for themselves because of, being in that program, but also because of what they put into it. They certainly got out of it, and they're doing a lot of great things now in life.
And obviously, I'm sure stepping away from coaching kind of gave you different perspectives and kind of, impacted that perspective. Now, obviously, you talk about those relationships, but kind of how did it impact, your perspective on the game you love and know better than most, and kind of life in general, Coach?
Yeah, well, I think on college football, it's a great profession. I think it's a terrible business in a lot of ways. And I think that's one of the things now, with the portal and NIL, and both those things coming together right as COVID's ending, it's all happening at once. So you have all these things. And so guys can leave whenever they want. You can pay players. And all of a sudden, what NIL was supposed to be wasn't really what it ended up being. I think they're trying to get that back, which if they do, that will definitely help. But the business of college football has become a big challenge, I know, for the coaches and even the players too, because you got so many other people involved, and you took a model that's been amateur for, hundreds of years, and you turned it into professional like that. And so, the profession's still unbelievable, right? The opportunity to be in that profession is, one that you would never pass up. The business side of it, I think, is really challenging for a lot of guys. So I think once that can get contained a little bit or under control, that will help. And I also think for the players too, it's a responsibility for the players to realize going where the money's at is not always the best thing for you in your development. And what I wish I would see more of now is more, of the analysts talking about the development that these programs are doing for their players. Everything's about this guy came in from this program. This guy's making this much money. He's got a Lamborghini. And that's great. Look, everybody likes a buck here and there, right? But I want to hear about, what are they doing to develop these guys? How are these guys getting better in the weight room? How are they getting better on the off season? How are they improving through fall camp? Where did this guy come from, and how did he get to where he is now? Why is he a captain? Some of those stories that we used to tell I don't see as much, and I would like to see that come back, because to me, the whole thing about college athletics, or what I think is important to anyone, is someone's story. I want to know their story. I don't know how much money they make. I don't care what they drive. They transferred in from somewhere. That's part of their story. I want to hear their story. I want to know what they're about. So I think that's a perspective I've taken. When you're in it, you're just going. Every day is, you're working 90 to 100 hours a week, and you just walk into that building and it is 100 miles an hour. And it's awesome because you can operate that way. You can maneuver around the building and practices and recruiting at 100 miles an hour, and you can go home and go to sleep and go back and do it again. Now I want to see more of, what's happening with the coaches and the players and how they're growing. I think we're missing some of that right now, but it's been good. It's been good for me. I think personal growth's always been a huge part of, my own development, and what I've cared about for other people. That's something I've always wanted to help other people develop, is grow in their own ways, and this personal growth idea. And so having some time to spend, with my family, my kids, my wife, myself, on developing who we are, helping my kids, they're 24, 22, and 18. And, they're in that perfect stage right now where they're figuring things out and what they want to do, and how they're, wanting to pursue their goals and trying to be there for them. And, my wife and I have been married 25 years and been together for 32. And so, opportunities for us too, to continue to develop our relationship. So, it's been nice. It really has been. And it's not 100 miles an hour. Like, people ask me, what it's like right now. And I tell them it's more of a slow busy. It's still busy and the days fly by. It's just more of a slow busy, to where, you're not operating at the same pace, and rightfully so. I did that for 23 years. And, it is nice to slow down, to stay busy, to keep doing things, pursuing what I think are important opportunities to keep developing, but to do it at a little bit different pace.
I think self-growth in life is so important. And I think your kids are at that right sweet spot where you're, me too, a 25-year-old,
Yeah.
finding out who you are, learning from your mistakes, and growing into, the person that you want to be. And obviously they are lucky to have you as a father, because, the emotion that you show for them is truly outstanding. Now, obviously you talk about kind of that slow busy, which I think being busy is always a good thing. Doing nothing is always a little unproductive. But, have you ever thought about going back into the game, coaching, or even in an analyst role, Coach?
Yeah, definitely haven't given up on, if there's another opportunity to coach and to be a part of the game. At the same time, my son, he just started his freshman year at Idaho State, which is a Division I FCS program, plays quarterback. He did choose to play that, by the way. So, and he's a pretty good one too. And so, my wife and I, and with our daughters, one is an esthetician and has her business, and she's thriving. My younger daughter is 22. She's going to graduate from Boise State with a psychology degree. We have a grandson now. And so I think those things happening all at once, we pushed pause a little bit and decided that this year is a year to continue to grow our family and see what happens with my son and his football career. Because one of the things I want to make sure of, I'm not missing, those opportunities. And, that was something when we had children. I talked to coaches that had older kids when were younger, and just said, hey, what's it like, when your kid's playing high school football, you go to games, you miss games. And one of the guys I work for, Dan Hawkins, and Cody Hawkins, his son, is the head coach at Idaho State, where my son plays. But when Cody was playing high school football, Dan would have the meetings with the team early Friday, and he'd go watch his son play. And so when I was working for Dan, that's what I decided. If I became a head coach, that's what I'll do. I'm not going to miss. And I've missed some opportunities with my kids, probably more than I should have. but I try to commit to being at those events as often as I could and prioritize that in the schedule. And so, right now, it's a chance for us to make sure that we're at those events, that we're a part of their lives. And I also think too, I think it's good to step back. I remember talking about this at one point with Chris Peterson, and I said it'd be good if you could just take a year and just go learn and be around other staffs and just get a fresh perspective on things. And he said, yeah, that's called getting fired. All right. And, at that time I wasn't even thinking that. And, ultimately, things happen in your career, but, I've kind of been the guy like, all right, so what, now what? Like good things happen. Okay. We got to go back to work. Bad things happen. Okay. We got to go back to work. Like, I think it's all your perspective. And so for me right now, I mean, there's so many things that I'm learning. There's so many things that I want to continue to learn. That if I get back into coaching, I'll be a better coach for it. If I get into, some type of analyst role, I'll be able to do that well. But I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now. I'm enjoying my family. I'm enjoying, talking to colleagues and in a way where I don't compete against them. So I can kind of be there as a sounding board and give my perspective and help some guys out. And then ultimately some of the young coaches too, I really want to see them be successful. So when they reach out to me, I try to give them as much wisdom as I possibly can so that they can hopefully take that and apply it to their careers and advance the way they want to and learn the way they need to be successful.
And it kind of goes back to that thing, Coach. Everything happens for a reason. You are where you are now because of your journey, and obviously it is just the start of your journey. And man, I love it. And I think reflection and personal time is super key. And I didn't mean to rush you back into the coaching or football field yet, Coach. I didn't mean to do that. And you talked about kind of giving that advice to the young coaches and being that mentor. What advice was that, or is it, that you give to young coaches, Coach?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I did well is, I found the guys that were in the positions that I wanted to be in. Mm-hmm. And I went in there and I shut up and I listened to what they had to say. And I watched and learned how they did things, and then went back and worked on it myself and thought about, in my mind, how would that apply to how I want to do things? And, I think, having great mentors really helps you. Number one, that you can emulate, you can be around, and that will invest back in you. But I think for young coaches, one of the things that I learned, and this came from a guy that we have a place up on the lake, a little condo, and a guy named Jordan Gross, who played 12 years in the league as an offensive tackle. And he's from Fruitland, Idaho. And we were sitting there one morning having coffee. And I asked him, what made you successful? What made teams that you played on successful? What made the guys successful? And he said, well, I think there was three things. I think it was, number one, guys would show up. Number two, they give a shit. And number three, they repeat. And I took that and I thought, how simple is that? Show up, give a shit, repeat. And I've used that with my teams ever since I had that conversation. And it's a simple formula. There's a lot to it. But if you think about it and you show up every day with the right attitude, the right focus, you're ready to learn, you're ready to get better, you're going to. All right. You say give a shit or care, right? You just care about what you're doing. It matters. It matters to you, that it matters to them, that this needs to get done, that you do it the right way. You're disciplined in doing the things the right way, then you're going to be successful. And if you can repeat that and build some consistency along the way, I think it goes back to that, being intentional. And I think that's really what that statement is, right? Like I always talk to guys about having initiative. Like if you want something, you have to have this initiative. Like, you doing this podcast, you're trying to learn, you're trying to get better. You're trying to find things out that other people have done, that have done better than you right now, that you want to try to learn from so you can do those things. You're taking initiative to do that. I love that. And, the other part of it too is being intentional about it. Right. And I always think, look, we all know what to do. We all know the right things. We all know that we need to go lift heavy weights and eat right and, sleep 8 hours. Like there's all the things. It's all out there. There's so much information. We all know what to do. It's just a matter of whether we're going to do it or not. And when we're not doing it, here's the difference. When you're doing it, okay, great. Everything's good. When you're not doing it, are you intentional about getting right back on track? Or do you just let yourself keep veering off and you get so far off path, you can't get back on, and now you're on a different path? And I think that's the same for everybody. So, you get this vision as a young coach. And when I talk to young coaches, they all want to be head coaches. They say, I want to do what you did. I want to be a head football coach. Okay. Well, are you doing the things it takes to be great at your position now? And they all look at, what am I doing to be a great head coach? What I'm telling them is, what are you doing to be a great GA? What are you doing to be a great position coach? What are you doing right now to be a great coordinator? You'll never get there if you're not great at the position that you're in. And so focus right now. Be where your feet are and focus on the task at hand and be great at that. And then get that opportunity to advance and be great there. And then you get that opportunity to advance because somebody is always watching. And when you do become a head coach, right? Like there were things that I'm sure guys watched me do, like saying I would never do that, or that's exactly how I would do it. And what I would tell young coaches and young players is, look, there's a process to get there. And once you're there, you can do whatever way you want.
Yeah.
But you have to get there.
Yeah.
And so that was my main focus for those guys is like, look, let's take this step by step. All right. And it's never going to be on your time. So let's understand that. But let's take it step by step. Let's be great right where you're at, be where your feet are. And then when you get that opportunity, you'll be ready and you can do whatever way you want to. So, I think when guys understand that and they can really be intentional about it, they can have initiative to go after, what they want and reach out to people that are doing things that they want to do and learn from them, then I think you're on the right path to having an opportunity to be in those positions.
Yeah, I think that kind of mantra can go for anything in life. Obviously, not just football, which you talk about. And do work your ass off. That's what it comes down to in life.
Sure.
And I love to end the podcast. As I've said, this is the Underdog Talk podcast. Now, Coach, would you mind sharing what has your biggest underdog moment in your life been, where everything was kind of stacked against you? You rose, you shone, you conquered, and ultimately you overcame.
Yeah, there's been a lot. Yeah, I've always kind of said in my career, I felt like I've always been the next best guy available, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think it's one thing where when I decided to get into coaching, my wife and I, we moved away to Eastern Oregon in LeGrand. I was making $230 a month. It was like 33 cents an hour. We're living on food stamps, government housing. And we came back to Boise State when Dan Hawkins got the job for nothing. We came back and volunteered for 6 months. And so my wife worked. My daughter was born at the time. So she's working, cleaning houses, being a nanny, all the thing, everything it took just for us to survive. And then the GA job opens up. And so, we take advantage of that. And, now we're making $500 a month. So right, we're living big time. But there was a job that opened up. And after a year of being a GA, there was a job, the tight ends job opened up. Chris Peterson's the offensive coordinator, and Dan Hawkins is the head coach. And Dan Hawkins was coaching the tight ends as the head coach.
Wow.
And so the defensive coordinator, Bob Gregory, leaves. He goes to Cal. And so Dan decides, I'm going to open it up, this position so I can be the head coach, in his case, so he could be the head coach. And I'm going to, hire a tight ends coach. And I thought, this is my shot. And I sat down with the staff and they said, hey, Harsh, we appreciate you and you're doing some good things here. We probably want somebody older, more experienced. That hurt.
Yeah.
But I kind of understood it. And they ended up hiring another GA from Oregon. So he was only a couple years older than me. And that right there, like that really crushed me at that time because it wasn't the older guy. And I remember this. I went down in the weight room. Jeff Pittman, who worked for me for 10 years, and I was the head coach. He was a strength coach at the time. Also the strength coach where my son's at right now. So this whole full circle thing has been crazy. But I went down there and I'm hammering the weights and I'm pissed. And I'm at this point now, I'm ready to quit.
Wow.
I've decided that, I got passed over. That was my shot. They went with somebody that's really in the same position I'm in. And he came up and grabbed me by the shoulder and he just said, hey, look, man, don't burn these bridges. And I remember that. He's like, don't ruin this opportunity. I know you're pissed. I know you want it. But if you do this right now, you're going to ruin an opportunity for you for the rest of your life. And so I went back to work. And when that tight end coach showed up, I helped him.
Wow.
I did everything I could to get him in the position to be successful. And 3 months later, he was gone. And guess who got the phone call on June 19th to come in the office of Dan Hawkins to be the tight ends coach? That was me. And that was, to me, like that's the defining moment of you didn't get what you wanted. You're ready to quit. And I was, and that's why, I look at a lot of players now that are leaving and going other places. Like you didn't get what you wanted right away. But thank God I had someone there to kind of get a hold of me and just say, man, you're wrong. Because I was completely wrong. And 3 months later, I'm the tight end coach at Boise State. And from that point forward, and I'll tell you what happened. Chris Peterson and Chris Strasser was the O-line coach at the time. And they brought me in and they said, hey, look, we knew you were pissed. We knew how much that hurt. We knew that was something that could be a game changer for you, of being in this profession. And they said, the way you handled it is the reason why we want you to be in this position now. So I say all that to remind people that, just because something bad happens to you and it doesn't go your way like you want it to right in that moment, doesn't mean it's not going to turn out great. And that was it. Like that led to everything from that point forward. All the opportunities I've gotten was because I didn't give up in that moment. And I think that's the biggest thing I've taken away from just being the guy that wasn't chosen, first, that I was, when he was let go, I was the next best. But when I got my shot, I was ready. Yeah. And I didn't let it go. So, I would just tell people like, look, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, man. Like just wait for that opportunity. It will come. It won't come on your timeline, but when it does and you get a hold of it, man, don't let it go. And you could do some really great things from those opportunities. And I think that's been one of the defining moments for me in my career.
Yeah, and the quote from Tony Romo comes to mind. Do things the right way and things will go your way. And I think that's a perfect way to, end this podcast and coach. Man, I think we all took a lot from this podcast. And I personally did, just realizing I have a lot to grow on in my personal life. And you got to have that time for that personal growth. So thank you for kind of reinstilling that into me. Now, before we go, the floor is yours. Where can we find your social media? Anything you're working on? Books? I don't know. Anything, Coach.
Yeah. God, social media. I think it's just at Coach Harsin.
Yeah, we'll put on
is what it's at. Yeah. On X and Instagram. Right now, there's a few projects I'm working on. There's a couple football things that I'm working through. At the same time, trying to work on just, what you and I had talked about, like going back and reflecting. Right. And I wouldn't say it's journaling, but I'm writing some things down that I've learned. Here's one thing that we did when I became the head coach that I think it's the best thing that I've ever done. And we started it in 2016. 2015. So after the 2014 season, we won the Fiesta Bowl, my first year as the head coach. 2015, we went 9-4. And I was sitting there going, well, how do we had a lot of the same team and we didn't have the success, right? And a lot of it is because you had the success the year before, right? So the standard, nobody was upholding that. And I want to know, what did people learn from that season? And so every year after, in 2015, every year after that, we would come in after the season's over, and we'd start at about 7 in the morning and we ended about 6 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And we'd sit in the staff room, all the full-time coaches, GAs, training staff, or head trainer, head strength coach. And we go around the table, and there was nothing off limits here. And it was just like, it was open mic for each person to say whatever they thought that they had learned from that season. And you got some crazy stuff. Like it didn't even apply to football. You know, the equipment guy would be like, we needed better socks or something like that. But it was completely free to let everybody just say whatever it is they learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that with the staff. And then every spring I meet with every single player for 45 minutes. And I had a series of questions for them, but it basically came down to, how do we and how do I as the head coach get better? And what can we do to help you? And so, you know, when you sit down with your people, the right people, and you ask them the right questions and they give you the answers, to me, like, that's where everything comes from. Yeah. And when you listen to them and you apply it, everything changes, right? Now everybody, not just the head coach, everybody has a voice in the development of the program and the success of the program. So, you know, to me, like, I think that is probably the best thing that I've done. And, you know, if anybody could take anything away from this, man, get around good people, work relentless at whatever it is you're doing. All right. Show up every day, care, repeat it. And then, man, if you got the right people around you and you listen to them and you guys are focused on the same goals and what you want to get done, then, you know, to me, I mean, you can achieve whatever it is you're after. So I think those things are extremely important. And sometimes I tell guys too, like, some of those things are corny. People will say that. It's not. That's exactly how it is. And when people understand that, I think that's when they start to achieve that level of success that they've always been after.
Yeah, sky's the limit, 100%. Once you lock in and like Coach said, I mean, all those things lock in, and I think there is no limit on to what you cannot achieve, or what you can't do if you put your mind to something. And I agree on that. Now, Coach, all your bio or all your Instagram bio and X will be in the bio. So guys, don't forget to follow Coach on X and Instagram. Guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Until next time, guys, Underdog out.